Hello, hello, and welcome back to Tool Time. I am Robbie the Toolman Taylor, and with me is always Whitey
Dave.
Dave Borland, my handy assistant, and our now two-time guinea pig, Shukuhu Work Shuffle. I know you guys love the name. I saw like two comments on the previous video. That's awesome. Anyway, um, Dave, you got some news if you wanna speak a little bit
Well,
about this
yeah,
amazing T-shirt that you got
right,
there.
right, right. This is going to be a featured T-shirt. It's one of the custom ones. It's a 5-star gift box. Yeah, so it's got front and back. Yeah, 5-star gift box. It will be a 5-star item. So yeah, it will be 250 tokens available after next patch, whenever that is, somewhere between Monday and next month, wherever. Yeah, hopefully.
So in a couple days, if you're watching this, whenever I upload it. And sugar, anything? No.
Yeah,
All right.
no, not
Well,
really.
so anyway, the reason why we're here today, I was gonna do something else, but then Sugar had actually an interesting question about a light and a dimmer, and why isn't there like some sort of chip that just dims a value from like 100 to 0 or whatever number you want? And we tried to build something like that, and so we're gonna go over there and figure out what we did and try to explain it to you guys, and hopefully it will be something useful. So let's go to the stage. All right, so here we are, and again, the thing that we have is already built because we're trying to save time this time. Okay, I'm sorry about the super long videos that we've done before. Hopefully you've learned something about it, and this one is going to have a couple of things that we haven't gone through and a couple of things that we have. So one thing that we're going to use is obviously like we're going to have this little button over here, right? And that's going to be our trigger, but the button can be replaced by anything, like an event like we've seen before. You can have a test event, or you can have a player joined, or you can have anything. It can be a trigger volume, it can be an interaction volume, whatever you want. It's just something that puts out a signal one time, only one time. So we're not dealing with 30 hertz or nothing like that. And the reason why we're not doing that is because we're going to use an execution switch, which basically is a board that will match a value with something, and then depending on the value that you can configure inside the actual board yourself, will pull out like a lot of different executions, right? So you're basically comparing something, and then it's like, okay, so if this is equal to this, just go. If this is equal to this, just go. And this is something that you could have done with an equal chip, but instead of using an equal chip and an if and a bunch of ifs, where you're going to use that switch. Something you will probably see often. And we have light, which was the whole thing. So can you tell us kind of real quick, sorry, I move around like crazy. I'm not used to this. Um, what you actually wanted to do and why we built this in the first place.
So basically the CV2 allows you to basically set up the different times of amounts that a dim light works. So this purpose of the CV2 right here is that I'm working on a really big project of making a realistic buggy car. That basically, when you get into the car and start the engine, it'll it'll mess with the lights. So when you get in the car, it's gonna turn on the lights, and there is actually a start button on the car that starts the engine that I'm currently working on. For this, it's gonna turn on the engine, and then it's gonna turn on the lights, kind of thing. It's just gonna turn them off, basically.
All right. And so we didn't go like in depth with that because we could really do more with it. But a couple of things that you will learn from this one is how to, with one thing, again, it doesn't have to be a button, but with one button, how to with one button turn something on and off, right? It is not a toggle button, so there's not like two signals that comes out of it. It's just one button. All right. So the way we do that is really over here. We're going to have the pressed going to a bool variable that is going to be a false or true or false. And every time we press it, we're going to change the true or false into whatever it was not. That's a chip called not. It's funny. That's all it really does. Whatever it is, turns it into the other thing, right? So when the signal runs over this, if it was true, this is going to turn into false. If it was false, it's going to turn into true. And then we're going to have our if chip. We've seen the if chips before, right? And then this is going to grab the true or false from that bool. And so basically every time we change it, this if chip is going to give us like two different paths, right? So one goes in, I don't know, I don't think you can see my hands anyway. So one thing goes in, right? Like we have one signal goes in and then splits two. That's it. That's all it's doing. And then from there, we're going to have like, so what happens if it was off, right? So if it was completely off, this is the super simple thing. We're going to go down all the way to set intensity. Set intensity we're using to change the instead of turning the light on and off really, that which we could, but the reason why I'm setting intensity instead of turning the light on or off is because we're using the switch to cascade the values of the intensity from 100 to 0, which you probably don't want to have it at 100. We'll demonstrate in a couple seconds because it's too bright, you know, and just don't do it. But we have it set to 100 just for sample purposes. And then once it is on and then it goes to turn it off, right, it's going to cascade through this integer switch. And the reason why I'm calling it a cascade is because it's just going to keep going until there's nothing more and then it stops, right? It's like water that falls. It just goes repeating until it's just a way of calling it. I'm pretty sure you maybe heard it before. When that happens, first of all, we did a calculation because we have like 10 values and we wanted it to turn off in a span of 3 seconds, right? And so if you divide 3 seconds by 10, we ended up with 0.18. So the first time it runs 0.18, then it checks. What does it check? We're grabbing from the light, we're turning the light get intensity, another chip. If you see anything with like intensities or this or that, there will always be set intensity, get intensity, set position, get position, set, get, all right? So we get the intensity. The intensity turns out in a blue thingy. What's the blue thing? The blue thing is a float. That means that it's a number that has point something, something, something. We don't need that, so we're going to turn it into an integer. There's two ways to turn floats into integers: floor to int, ceiling to int, or I think there's another one that is average, whatever. It doesn't matter because we're dealing with like literally like whole numbers because that's what we did ourselves. So floor or ceiling is the same. The floor is like, you know how when you get a grade, if you get graded in like 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, like if it's under 5, you know, it goes down to the lowest number. If it's 0.6 and up, it will go to the next number, right? So that's what this does. So floor to int. So basically we'll grab the float, the lowest value, and turn it into. So now we have this is checking the intensity and is giving us an integer. An integer is a whole number. We're going to put it into a switch. And then we configured it to have 190 all the way down to 10. There's no 0 because we're checking if it's 10, it's going to turn it off to 0. So that's kind of the end of the line, right? And we're setting, so basically the way this works without you having to like look at it, just believe me on this one, is when the value is 100, it will turn it to 90. Then we're going to go to a delay that is over there where sugar is standing, and that delay is going to wait another 0.18 seconds, and it's going to return back to the execution integer switch, meaning that it's going to check again without having to run at 30 hertz or nothing like that. We're just looping it back into itself, but we just changed the intensity from 100 to 90, right? So once it goes back to the integer switch, now the value is 90, it will match it to the 90, which will then go to an execution that turns it into an 80, goes back to the delay, checks back, and it keeps doing that until it reaches 10. Once it reaches 10, it turns it into 0, and then that one connection is not plugged to the delay. So there, it stops. There's no more line. That's the end of the flow of our circuits, right? So one, if it's on, turns it off like that, cascading through our integer switch. If it's if it's off, it turns it on with just one chip, end of the line, just turns it on to 100 intensity. And we can see it now, all right? So if we push it one time, blindingly bright, right? I know you can see the circuit, so you will see the little flashing lights now. It will try to cascade. So here we go. Hopefully look on the right side of your screen. And it just basically steps it down 10 intensity every 0.18 seconds. Can do it again. It's on. It's off.
I didn't see the lines flash.
It can be smoother. It can be smoother, and obviously, you know, the more values you check, especially because again, you don't maybe want to do it from 100 because like Sugar said, it looks dumb, right? Like nothing is that bright, especially if he's dealing with like a car, right? So maybe you'll start with something really low, like 40, 30, maybe even 25, 20, something like that. 20 is usually when you spawn a light, it's set at 20, right? So if you have 10 values, you will change it from like 20 to 18 to 16 to 14 to something like that. And then that smooth transition will be actually even more smooth. You can also play with the values of the delays, which should be the same for both, by the way, just so it doesn't have like some weird thing. And yeah, that's it. Like you play with those, make kind of whatever you want, simple thing. And two things we learn: how to use one button to do an on and off, right? And how to use delays and a switch to match values without using equals and ifs and cascade something. So some new concepts. What do you think? Do you think this is something that could work? Obviously, given that you adapt it to your use case
Yeah,
scenario.
pretty much.
No, wrong. This, sorry. 2 thumbs up. So yeah, interesting question today. And if you guys got any questions about like, you know, something that you've been trying to do, and just to clarify, maybe this is not the best way to do it, right? This is just the way that I came up with like on the fly. So, but if you got any questions, join our Discord. I'll put the link on the description, or message us, message Dave, message me, message, you know, join the club, RNDM Architects, and we will try to actually bring some of you guys in and talk about some stuff like this. And yeah, that's it. Anything else you guys want to add? All
Also, if you
good.
do
All right.
have any questions, make sure you drop a comment in this video. Robbie's going to read them.
Oh yeah, I do kind of. I can't promise you that, but I will. No, I'm, I'm kidding. I will. All right. Too long. I'll see you guys next time. I hope you learned something. I keep doing the wrong button. Ciao.
I hit the other button. Blocked myself out. I'm like, oh, well,
I
never
just
mind.
said out.